Criminal defense attorney and legal analyst Rikki Klieman. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Erica.
Does this kind of case have any sort of a chance?
It shouldn't have a chance at this stage. We do have sanctions against people who text while driving. We do not yet have any sanctions for those who send the text. And judges shouldn't be in the business of lawmaking. Legislators should be in the business of lawmaking.
But you found, I know, Mark, in your research for this story, found some really interesting other cases with somewhat similar.
Yeah, there's nothing that's identical to this.
Yeah.
No precedent.
No precedent whatsoever. There are cases, of course, where now you have companies who have to pay up multi-million-dollar payments to when their employees get behind the wheel and start to text.
Sure.
That's not the same thing, right? Because this is a case where you're basically trying to find somebody who wasn't even in the car at all and hold them at least partially responsible for it. The argument that the couple's lawyer makes is it's the equivalent of as if the girlfriend had put her hands over his eyes while he was driving. If that had been the case, would she have been responsible? But of course, if that had been the case, she would have been in the car.
Well, that's right. She would have been in the car. And you can't extend this kind of liability. I mean, that would stop texting altogether. Do we want to know if someone's walking down the street and they're going to walk into traffic? Is that person who sends the text responsible? I mean, where does it end? So if a legislator says, look, we need to pass a new law, we're going to call it Erica's Law, well, let them go ahead, but not a judge.
What if they knew, the person sending the text knew that the other person was driving a car at that moment?
Doesn't matter to me, Charlie. It doesn't. I think that that's what the plaintiffs are trying to show. They're saying, of course she knew he was driving. For heaven's sakes, they extended all of these text messages all day long, and she knew where he went when he went there. That's not the test. She's not aiding and abetting him from far, far away. It's the driver's responsibility not to look at that text or not to answer it.
Because she said, and she has said, I may have known he was driving.
Then she probably did know.
So this all comes down to, then, in your mind, the personal responsibility of the driver. Just because the person sends the text doesn't mean you have to read it and answer it.
Right. And by the way, it may not be a bad idea to legislate that we shouldn't have people texting when they know that someone else is driving. But you can't have one judge who suddenly finds a duty, suddenly finds negligence, suddenly finds cause, when there has never been a case like this before.
What if there was a smoking gun text where the driver said, I'm driving home now? And the sender continued to send.
Well, the sender continues to send, and if he says, I'm driving home now, well, then it's his responsibility to say, I've sent that message, and I'm not going to read her messages anymore.
But is there any obligation to the sender to stop, knowing that the other person is driving?
I think at this point, no. Might it be a lovely idea? Yes, but not now under the law.
Okay.
I think you've covered it.
I think I should be arguing this case in court.
No, you want to see the legislators take care of this. And
they may.
And even if there was intent, even if in fact the driver says, I'm in the car driving, I desperately need for you to text me, even then does not move the responsibility or shared responsibility on the part of both people.
No, and it's really my greatest worry, Charlie, that when we keep extending and extending and extending, it is where does it end? And unless we would like to outlaw texting in the entire world because we don't know where people are. I mean, if I'm walking through Times Square and I'm in the middle of traffic and I say to my husband, I'm not crossing Times Square, please don't text me, and he texts me and I decide to look and all kinds of cars collide, I certainly don't want my husband being responsible either.
Especially your husband.
Especially my husband. Very good point.
Mark Strassmann, Rikki Klieman, nice to have you both here. Thank you.